What's up, everybody? What's going on, everyone? Welcome to tonight's live. Welcome to tonight's live. Great to see everybody. Let me sit down. Great to see everyone. Welcome, family. Welcome. What's up, Brantley? I see you. Ray, what's going on? Trey Sean. What's up, everybody? What's going on? I'm gonna wait about a minute. Just welcome everybody onto the live, and then we'll get started. I'm gonna give you guys some updates and get straight into it. I won't waste none of y'all time. What's up, Tony? I want to thank everybody that's been giving on the Cash App and giving to the channel. Like I said, we have some things that we're trying to do, y'all, and all of the help is necessary. So thank you. I'm not first, I'm not last, but when Samantha Lee live streams, I click really fast. Well, I'm glad, Rafa. Thank you. Thank you, guys. What's up, Terrell? What's up, CJ? How y'all doing? We have a really good live tonight, y'all. We are going to have a really good live. I am going to be very honest. I'm not feeling the best today, but the show has got to go on, okay? And and the thing is, funny, crazy story is I'm trying to find content. And the content I created was like the longest content that I've ever created. I'm like, why did I do this to myself today? Oh, Lord. I'm probably going to have to get back into it tomorrow. I'm probably going to go back and do some of them, but whatever. It is what it is. So forgive, whatever. We working regardless, right? Whether I don't feel good, whatever, I'm tired. We going to make this thing happen. Okay? Be Marvelous said, looking the best. Thank you so much. How old are you, please? Why you saying please? Like, why do you need to know how old I am? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do you need to know? I'm over 18. That's the only way you need to say please, what's your age? Because that's the only way it's a dire need to know my age. Otherwise, it's a little like, why to please? Are you sick? I feel like I might be sick. I don't know what exactly I'm going through. I'm definitely having headaches, and I've been having some what's it called? Body. What is it? When your body gets like a fever? I don't know how you don't call it. Okay. I think I've been on long enough. Anyway, y'all, welcome to the live. If you guys do not know, my name is Samantha Lee. I have a platform on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and the U of Tube. And I put out content where I share my perspectives in relationships and spirituality. Right now, it's primarily spirituality, and I do relationship commentary as well. I'm a therapist by trade. I'm a full-time therapist. I work for an agency here in Georgia. And I'm also a full-time content creator. So you'll see me live on YouTube every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You also see me live on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I try to cover content that I believe would be edifying, unifying, all the above. Bring in my education, my spirituality, my observations from things I've done, things I've experienced, things I've learned over the years. If you guys are not familiar with the change I'm doing now, I'm definitely doing more relationship content. I've said this to I will say this to any content creator. I think that there's a sense of authenticity you have to have. And if you're going through a change of life and your content stays the same, there's a lack of connection you have with the content. And right now I'm in a space in my life, and I'm honoring that space. I'm honoring that change. I feel like I'm being obedient to God in this. And so you're going to see a lot more spiritual content related to my faith. So again, I think I talk about it differently than anybody else, just because of where I come from. I I don't come from the best of everything, but the way I've learned about God and my story, I think is unique. And I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to come on here and make me seem to be, you know, some type of angel, because I'm not. But I am somebody that really does love the Lord, and I really want to honor him with what I do. So that's that. Alrighty. So guys, tonight I'm talking about something that I honestly just learned myself. Okay. I'm going to tell you how this came about, because all of this is very, very important, and it plays off of last week. So God has been giving me downloads, y'all. And when God gives me downloads, I have to share the downloads, because there's lessons I've learned in the downloads. So I went through a wilderness season a couple years ago. Wilderness season is literally a season where it's you and God, right? And God is starting to weed things out of your life. He is asking you to change certain behaviors. There's a lot that God is doing in that season. And in that season, it feels like you really are, you're hearing God, you're learning more about him, you have this hunger for him. But there's a point to the season, okay? And there's things that he's going to ask you to change. So this could be preparing you for a change in your life, a new season in your life. Usually it's a promotion. Usually it's another level. There's something that God is calling you to on the other level, right? Unfortunately, a lot of us decide to settle in this wilderness because we don't see what we want to see, and we give up too soon. So that was my story about 2 years ago. I think it was about 2 years ago. God had brought me through a wilderness season, which again is a season where God is taking you to a place where it's just you and him. He gives you a promise, and he takes you to a wilderness. This wilderness is in your own life. This wilderness is in your own space. So once he gives that promise, it's preparation time. And in that preparation time, you're just you and him. Okay? He's going to ask you to change certain things. There's things that you once did that you no longer feel good doing. You're going to feel, as you get close to him, you're going to feel promptings, just internal promptings of what you should do and should not do. Not a comfortable season at all, because if you're not 100% invested in the process, you will give up, okay? If you're in it for the wrong reasons, which I will describe, you will give up. All right. So I'm going to give you guys the real truth. I'm going to give you guys the real truth. And I don't want to tell y'all the whole truth, nothing but the truth, but I'm going to tell y'all the truth. I'm going to tell you how I failed my wilderness season. Okay. And again, a wilderness season is when God gives you a promise. God gives you a dream. I'll give you a couple of examples from the Bible. Joseph had a dream that he would be second in command, and his brothers would be bowing down before him. And he shared that dream. Unfortunately, that did not go good for him. And he went into a preparation. He went into a wilderness. He was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery. He then was a slave for, I think, about 10 years. He then was accused, or falsely accused, was thrown into prison for 2 years, and then he got promoted. Okay, his wilderness season was 12 years long. David's wilderness season, I believe, was like 22 years long. Abraham had a wilderness season for a while. He ended up birthing Ishmael in his wilderness season. That's a whole nother situation. But it all started with a promise. David was promised to be king. Joseph was promised to be second in command, and that his brothers would be bowing before him. Abraham was promised to be the father of many nations, but he had no child. Again, there's always a promise. When you start getting close to God, he's going to give you a promise. There's a promise that he's going to give you, okay? And for a lot of people in this promise, what happens is God's like, how bad do you want the promise, right? So there might be something that he called you to, or you're asking him for, or you envisioned. Let's say, I don't know why this is on my spirit to say. Somebody on here must have prayed this. But some of y'all might have prayed for a better marriage, or a better relationship in your marriage. You might have said, listen, God, I really, really want this situation to work out. I really, really don't want to lose the situation that I'm in. or whatever that may be. And God took you to a wilderness. There was you asked for this relationship to work. You wanted this situation to happen. God took you to a wilderness. He said, how bad do you want it? There was changes that you made. You got closer to God. You started going to Bible studies. You started doing what you needed to do in order to get closer to him. What happened on the other side of the wilderness season, okay, was that a lot of times what we think is going to happen or how it's going to happen isn't what God intended, right? So you might have said, I want my marriage to work. I want something like, you might have said something like that in that season. And God might have said, this isn't the marriage that I'm going to make work. You're asking for a wife, you're asking for a right hand, but this isn't the one. Or sometimes we give up before that answer happens. But again, sometimes we want things that we created to work. And unfortunately, y'all, if it didn't start with God, if God wasn't what put it together, although he could do anything, but if two people aren't on the same page spiritually, it makes it very, very hard to keep something together, right? And so there might have been somebody on this live that had prayed that for their relationship, they went into a wilderness season, and it just seemed like things got worse, right? And then you're like, okay, well, this isn't working, so I might as well go back to what I'm doing. That is exactly what happens in wilderness seasons. People ask for a job to work, a company to work, whatever. It always looks like it's really not going to happen before it happens. And most of us give up when it looks like it's really not going to happen. Like with Joseph, let's bring that story back up. He got the promise that he's going to be in power, and the first thing that happens to him is he's thrown into a pit. God put him in the most impossible situation. And he's like, okay, let's test your faith. I'm going to let your brothers throw you into a pit and sell you into slavery. You couldn't be further away from what God just promised you. Did that mean that didn't happen? No, it did happen. But in that season, God is developing character, because the very thing that you might be praying for, or the very promise that you're asking God to come through on, he's like, you don't have the character to sustain this. Like, as much as you might have wanted that marriage to work, you didn't have the character to keep the marriage together. So he was like, I need to go ahead. I'm going to make all hell start breaking loose. I'm going to make the relationship 10 times worse. I'm going to turn up the furnace on this thing, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to see what rises to the surface. Because in the Bible, if you look up any passage of scripture, they talk about how when we ask God for something, or our relationship with God, period, he likens it to gold. He likens it to the purification process of gold. Always, it's talking about refining gold. Why? Because when you refine gold, when you purify gold, you turn it up to 7,000 degrees and you let the impurities rise to the top. And whoever is managing that system is wiping the impurities off the top, so it purifies gold. Actual gold is translucent, is transparent. And so a lot of times what happens is when the impurities rise to the top, when you realize you're angrier, you've lost your patience, there might be, well, I'm just going to speak on what happened with me. I don't have patience. I'm very rigid. There's core wounds that have risen to the top, which we're going to talk about today. There's things that lacking, I don't know if I said it, but I should say it twice if I have. Impatience, what else rises to the top? I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, those are the main things. Fear of being vulnerable, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. Just all these fears started coming up. So all these things were coming up, and I'm like, I didn't know I was so rigid. This got to be a situation because I'm flexible, or like, I didn't know I was impatient. I thought all this time I was the most patient person I know. Like, God will turn the heat up, and we will think, man, did I hear God correctly? I must have heard God wrong, because this looks worse. This looks more impossible than it did before. Like, if it was bad before, It's really bad now. And that is how you know God is in it. I know that sounds crazy. That is countercultural. Everybody says that, oh, when God's in it, it makes it easy. I just saw a thing that said, oh, you know when it's your man because it's easy. No, that's actually the opposite. I feel like it's the opposite. If it's done without process, it's not God. If it's done without process, it is not God. God always has a process to promise. And so whenever somebody says, oh, if it's easy, it would be easy if it was God. No, 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 no. The process wouldn't be easy. You would have an anointing. Okay. And what I mean by anointing is that God would give you like a supernatural energy to want to figure this thing out. That does not mean the process is easy. It just means that you have an anointing to figure it out. I'll give you an example. There was a time when I was starting this YouTube channel, and I really had this crazy, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like November, I believe, of 2023. And I had the channel, and there was just something in my spirit that was like, I really want to do this. Like, I don't know what it was. I was just hungry. It's like I woke up and I was hungry for it. And y'all, I researched everything about YouTube, everything. I watched every algorithm, blah, blah. I just went in. I went in. And I had good people around me that were able to help me with this as well. And like, I just was so committed. I had like such an energy. Does that mean that the YouTube was easy? No. I started creating content. I didn't know what to create content about. I didn't know what my persona would be on the internet at that time. I had no idea. Okay. And so I'm comparing myself to other people. Are people going to want to listen to me? Are people going to want to hear what I have to say? Like, I'm just feeling all different kinds of ways. Right. And so at some point, God just says, talk, just speak. And I'm like, okay. And I started creating content. I stopped overthinking it, just started posting everything. Now, although I was being obedient to what God had called me to do, did my channel grow? No, it barely grew. The first month, it barely grew. The second month, it kind of grew, right? The third month, I had 50,000 subscribers in 1 month. 50,000 subscribers in 1 month. I had 3 or 4 viral shorts that 50,000 subscribers. So it was like that wilderness season, that season, 3 months, God would call me to do this. And even though at first it looked like nothing was happening, I was like, I'm lucky if I get 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year, right? But like by the end of the third month, I was at 50,000 subscribers. I was like, how did this even happen? But it was a supernatural anointing, right? And I couldn't give up. I could not give up in the wilderness. I could have stopped the first month. I could have stopped the second month. But there was something about my energy that just gave me energy to be able to keep going. And what happens is, because a lot of us look at the storm, look at what's happening, we give up, right? And that's a test. It's a test. Okay. And a lot of us fail that test because it doesn't look like it's happening. It's not happening fast enough. We live in an instant gratification culture, and God is delayed gratification. He is never going to give you what you want when you want it. He's just not. If you're expecting God to give you something tomorrow, you know, he gonna wait till the very last minute. That's the type of God we serve. But when he gives it to you, it's always on time. It's always on time. Okay, so back to my story. Oh, so y'all, so a couple years ago, and I'm just going to be honest about it. I'm not going to overthink it. All right. So I was let me bring you guys closer, because this is a personal story. We're friends now. Okay, so y'all, so I had a wilderness season where I can't believe I'm telling this story. Okay. So God had called me in this wilderness season to basically, not talk to anybody, meaning no dating. He wanted me to focus on him. He wanted me to, there's just other things that he wanted me to get in order, but that was like the main thing, just really focusing on myself, focusing on him, focusing on getting certain things in order. One of those things was like getting my finances in order, just like everything that he wanted me to do at that time, right? So I was like, okay, so there was things I was changing very rapidly. I was a little half-stepping it. I ain't gonna lie. I was a little half-stepping it because even though he told me not to date anybody, I did not go on any dates with anyone, but I was still communicating with people, right? And with the person, really. It was a person. And so I was still communicating with a person. And God had basically said, no dating, no this. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just talking to them on the phone. This harmless, duh. And I was still, I did do some of the things. Some of the things I did full obedience. Some of the things I didn't do full obedience on, right? So what ends up happening is 3 months into the process, I have a test. I didn't know it was a test, but I had a test. All right. And this is where my half-stepping obedience in certain areas messed me up. Guys, this is a new revelation to me. Okay, so understand this is brand new. So I go into the test. Now I am very, very excited because I'm believing that this is the moment. Wilderness is ending. This is about to be the end of the road. I'm excited. I'm like, I've been waiting so long for this moment. Like, I've been fasting. I've been praying. I haven't been dating nobody. I've been, I haven't been going, like, I haven't done anything. I was just really just isolating. Like, I would spend my weekends alone. And, I really was just trying to focus on what God wanted me to do. Now, again, there was places I was half stepping, which we'll get into that later, which is he said no dating. And I was like, okay, well, I won't go on a date, but, I'll, talk to somebody, and we'll talk about that later. So anyway, what happens is that I go into this test in this situation where I'm thinking, y'all, I'm walking in like I'm excited, I'm happy, finally in a row, I'm walking in, and I walk into a situation basically where everything I thought was going to happen is shattered. Everything I thought it was going to happen, I was so sure. I was like, oh man, this is the moment. Everything I thought was going to happen did not happen. Everything. Right? And so now, y'all, I'm having a full-on tantrum. When I say tantrum, let me tell y'all first and foremost, my hopes were on up. My hopes was on 1,000,000. My hopes was like, okay, your girl about to, I'm and I came into that room, and everything I thought was going to happen did not happen, y'all. Nothing. Oh my gosh. I just remember how I felt that day. And I did not know what I know now, which I'm a little nervous that I know this now. I'm a little nervous, but I found out that was a test. That he's going to send us to a place that's like a promised land. And how we respond to the obstacles in the promised land determines our entrance into the promised land. In that instance, being tested, I was like, forget this. Forget this. I'm over here fasting. I'm not dating. I'm not doing this. Oh no, forget this. I'm back. I'm like, Everything I didn't want it, I was basically saying I'm waiting until this moment. I was fasting for this end result, and it didn't happen the way I thought it was. I was like, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back, baby. I'm not gonna spend the rest of my summer doing this. Oh no, no, no. I'm out of here. I'm Audi 3000. Y'all, can I tell you? I mean this with all due respect. That was the worst decision that I made. I should have pushed through in the wilderness. That was my test, and I failed. Why? Because when it looked like what I wanted was not going to happen, I defaulted. I went back to what I knew. I didn't go. And what I knew wasn't that great. What I knew wasn't even, like, no disrespect, but it was not even it. Like, you know how you in your mind, y'all, you get to a place where you're like, oh my gosh, like it's gonna be amazing. We about to go. Like, think about a vacation, y'all. Think about like, a party. Let's say you about to go to a party and you're like, I haven't been going to the parties. I've been fasting. I've been whatever. I've been in Lent. And I'm just so excited to go to this party. It's gonna be amazing. Blah, 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 blah. You just hype it up in your head. You just like, oh, it's gonna be amazing. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be y'all. And you go to the party and it's whack, or it's not that fun. It's like, okay, it's cool, but it wasn't life-changing. Like, my life didn't change going into this party. Like, I've been excited for this party for at least 3 months. And I go to the party and it's cool, but it it really wasn't that. It really wasn't what anyway. That's how it was. Because it wasn't even what I thought it would be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I did all that. I done failed my wilderness test because of this, and that one even worked. You know what I'm saying? It's just frustrating, family. It's just frustrating. But anyway, all I'm saying, it wasn't a party, family. But again, I had been talking to somebody, and then I was like, oh, I'm excited about getting to know them. And it wasn't, it was like, because if I had listened to God the way I should have listened to God, I wouldn't have been communicating with them at all. I would not have even done that, right? But I did. And so that then creates an attachment to something, right? So now you're more invested. The more I talk to this person, the more whatever I'm communicating with them, I'm invested now. So now when I go through this season and God is calling me to stay in the season and stay out of this situation, me being, fraternizing with this connection didn't help me stay out of the season. Now I'm like, oh, well, dang, I don't want to be not living now I feel like I'm missing out on something because I didn't fully obey, right? I didn't fully obey. I hope this all makes sense, family. Please tell me in the comments it makes sense. But yes, that's what happened. Okay? And so, fast forward. We're now 2 years later. God, I'm in church. I'm minding my business. And minding my business. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm struggling with some things. I'm struggling. I've been being obedient in certain areas. I'm trying to be obedient in all areas. Really, I'm quick obedience. Like, God says this, I do it. God says that, I'm in a different zone. But again, y'all, I'm fully focused. There's nothing distracting me. The only thing distracting me is me, right? So I am like fully involved. There's like, when God said no, I said, okay, cool. I hear you. I know what you're telling me. Fine. And so I'm doing what he's called me to do. And I'm struggling because I'm realizing that I'm coming up with some issues, right? Like I'm being tormented because of something that we're going to talk about today. And so the enemy is coming at me. Like, I'm going with these doubts. I'm like, when am I going to get there? What's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going through it, just tormented, like going through it, going through it, going through it. I'm going through these doubts. Like, God gives me like clarity on a thought. I'm going through a doubt. Like, and I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm literally like, I'm getting my daughter home from school. I'm putting myself in the room. I set her up. I cook dinner. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. She's set up. I go in my room. I close the door. I cry. Like, I'm literally crying every day. Like, I am being tormented. And what happens is that God has calls me to do certain things during this time. Now, these things are not comfortable for me. These things are not what I want to do. And I know it's God because I would never do these things. Like, God calling me to do something, like, absolutely not. I would never do this. But he's like, I know he's preparing me for something, right? So I'm like, okay, God, I'm gonna be obedient. And as I've developed this relationship with him, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna play this game. I'm not gonna argue with you for 8 hours. I'm just gonna do what you want me to do. So quick obediences, right? And so I'm trusting him, he's trusting me. Like, we're going through it, right? So he asked me to do something. I do it. I do kind of spin in my anxiety about it. And I go through this whole pattern of, I'm believing God for something. The enemy's right there causing me doubt and confusion. Anytime, y'all, God gives you a thought of clarity and then there's confusion, you just feel negative. That is the enemy. When God gives, even when God gives me conviction, it does not make me spin or get me confused. Like, I am clear. I know exactly what he's calling me to do. I know, like, and I might struggle because I want to make sure that it's the right move, but it does not come with the spinning, the condemnation, the woe is me. Like, that is not how God speaks. God speaks, and it's very subtle, it's very small, it's consistent, and it aligns with what he would say, right? So next day, I'm supposed to be going to church. I go into church, and I'm like I'm sitting there listening to the pastor. And this is where it's very important, y'all. Listen to this, y'all. Listen to this. I listen to the pastor, and the pastor says this. He says that a mature Christian is one that allows a process. If God's putting them through a process, it's not about give me. It's about make me. And that when we go to God and we want him to do something, and we're doing whatever he's calling us to do because we want something, like, it's attached to end goal. Like, okay, God, I'm gonna pray, I'm gonna fast, I want the job. And as soon as you get the job, or you don't get the job, you give up. He says that that's not covenant, that's manipulation. He said, when you go to God and all you're going to God for, or you're praying, or you're fasting, or you're doing all these God, like, to hear God type of stuff, and he knows your heart. He knows the motivations of our heart. He tests those things. He's saying that if it's a mission, like, I want this, so I'm going to you because I just want this. When you get it or you don't, you give up on it. And he's like, again, that is not relationship. That's not covenant. That's not a genuine relationship with God. That is manipulation. That is you trying to manipulate a higher power to get what you want. And I had to sit in that daggone seat. And I was like, yeah, I did that. And it brought me back to the bottom of the map, where God showed me I've been in this process before. One thing I have to say that I think is beautiful is that God is a God that spins the block. That, yes, I didn't steward that last season well. I didn't do the right thing, right? I didn't. I mean, and y'all, it wasn't even worth it. That's the part, man. That is the part. Like, I'm like, it wouldn't even, you know what I'm saying? Like, the enemy makes things look so good. Like, you're missing out on so much. Like, you know how you, like, if you've ever been in a situation where you're like, I'm not going to drink, or I'm not going to go to the club, or I'm not going to do this. And when you're not going, it seems like the thing to do. It seems like, oh my gosh, life is being lived and I'm not living it. Right? Like, you're like, oh my gosh, like, everybody going to the club, everybody out. Like, I'm by myself, like, reading the Bible. Like, I'm missing out on life. Y'all, and then you go. Thank you, Trey Sean. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate y'all for those who are giving. But it's like, then you go into that environment and you're like, this really ain't it. Like, this, I just could have stayed home. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know what I'm saying? Like, we make it because we're not in it. We think it's like oh my gosh, like, oh, everybody living. Oh my God, like, what's happening? Like, it's like, it wasn't even all that. It wasn't even all that. Like you watching people get drunk, fall over themselves, people twerking and working. You know what I'm saying? You just, you over here, you're like, okay, this is actually kind of whack. I really could have just stayed home, ate my snacks, watched my TV, and saved me some daggone money and time. Right? Like, that's what I'm saying, right? Anyway, same thing here, family. Same concept. So it was a mirage, right? And a lot of times the enemy creates really good mirages, and it gets you to a place where you really think you're missing out on something you're not missing out on. You're in a desert. You're thinking that, oh, I'm missing out on so much, and it's a mirage. It's not real. It looks like a waterfall. It's actually a puddle. A puddle that's about to dry up. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, I digress. The second thing that my pastor says is that in that wilderness, so I'm telling you guys how I failed the first one. The first one, which is I gave up. That's how I failed. It wasn't even that I half-stepped obedience. It was the half-stepping obedience got me to give up when it looked like nothing was going to happen. Like, what I wanted wasn't going to happen. And I gave up. And I just went to my own devices. That's how I failed. So now in this one, I'm going full throttle with God. Because that conviction really got to me. And the reason why it got to me so much was that, like, God has been so faithful to me, y'all. Like, God has really, I've seen so much in my life, and God has blessed me abundantly. I look back at that season of my life, and even though I failed, even though I gave up on what God was doing in my life, He still provided for me. He still sustained me, even though I went my own way. And it was broken. It wasn't right, but He still was there. He was still present for me. And so, like, I'm not the type of person that likes being around people that I don't feel like are genuine. That's not a thing for me. I'm very suspicious of people's motivations at times. And so for me, when I am in this position and I'm like, I'm not being genuine with God. Like, the reason why I'm controlling this, the reason why I'm chronically worrying about what He's promising me, the reason why I'm so concerned about what it looks like is because A, I don't trust Him, and B, I'm in it for that. Like I'm so rigid. I'm so inflexible about how this is going to go and what it's going to look like that I can't fully give it all to God. Like I can't fully surrender it. Like it's like, okay, well, is it going to look like this? Is it going to look like that? I just was confronted with a core wound that I struggle with so much, and I didn't even realize it. I'm being honest with you. I didn't even realize it. Like, I didn't realize how deep this wound was for me. And so when the pastor kept talking, he was like, this season of our lives, when we're being, some of us are doing Lent, or some of us are like giving things up in order to focus on a relationship with God. And so for me, I'm honoring Lent. I'm doing Lent. I see that I see that in this season, we can allow God to make us. And it's not the wilderness, the past season of my life wasn't to punish me. It was to prepare me. It was to prepare me. It was to grow something in me and heal parts of me that I had not like that no one could fix. That I didn't even know was broken. I've been living my life a certain way all this time, not even realizing how much brokenness is within me. That I'm over here trying to give up on something, and all he's trying to do is make me better. All he's trying to do is take me to the next level, and I'm over here fighting it. I'm fighting the stream because of my trust issues, because of my childhood trauma, because of the things that I've learned how to manage through therapy, but I have not healed. That's the truth. It's the real truth. And so as I'm like going through this process and I'm like struggling, through it, I realized in that moment, the reason why this process was so hard for me was because I hadn't fully surrendered the process. That when God gives us a promise, the promise is not for us to hold on to. It's not for us to like try to hold. It's like, it's for us to open up with a hand. Like, it's supposed to be like an open hand promise. And you surrender it. You trust that if God promised this, he's going to take care of it. He's going to see it through. Whatever it's going to look like, it's going to be the best thing for me. That I've made my own decisions and I've chosen my own way. And it's time for me to truly trust the only being at this point right now that I have. That God has given me something, and he's given me a relationship with him, a real one, a genuine one, where I hear him and I feel him. Like, I feel the promptings. I know his voice. Those are things that I can't buy. You know how many people want? You can have all the money in the world, but you don't have a relationship with your God. You have no peace. You can do backstrokes in multiple pools all over the world. But you ain't got no peace. You're not fulfilled. You're always stressed about something. It's a lack of a connection. You could be materially wealthy and spiritually broke. And so for me, it was like, once I surrendered that, and I was like, God, I trust you, man. I want to know you. I want to know you. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be the very person that I'm trying to avoid. And y'all, I felt a peace fall over me that I can't explain. I went through, 8 episodes of this thing from John Bevere called The Wilderness. And I learned about what the wilderness is, what it's about. What does God want from me in the wilderness? What does he want from me? What do you want, God? Whatever you want, it's not like you're not going to have to fight me. I'm just going to be obedient. And God, y'all, I can't tell you the doors that have opened. I can't tell you the peace that I've had. I can't tell you this, just the synchronicities that I've experienced. There's things that he's just telling me, like, don't do this, don't do that. And I'm like, okay, okay, okay. And every time I do it, it's like an excitement I have. And I'm like, why am I excited about this? Like, why? Like, why am I doing you know, it's like it's I can't explain. Like, life is exciting. Life is fulfilling. Like, he had me, y'all, let me tell y'all. Let me tell y'all. This is the crazy part. So I'm gonna speak about core wounds. We're gonna get there, right? And I apologize for me taking so long. But okay, perfect. Okay. So we're talking about core wounds, all right? And so there's 5 different core wounds. And so one of the things that the wilderness season is about is healing wounds. Some of us are more wounded than we realize. And it's not just about our last relationship. It's about childhood trauma. And so I was like, oh, wow, I think I have core wounds, right? So I went through the core wounds. I went through what that looks like. What are these core wounds, and like, how do you heal them, right? So before I get into that, y'all, there are certain things I want you guys to know in this process that God has been talking me through, right? So there's times where, like, he wakes me up in the middle of the night. I normally am going to wake up anywhere between 2 and 6 a.m. every morning. And I'm going to stay up, I'm going to pray. I take into account the number that I wake up and the number I go to sleep. Each number represents something. I look it up. It usually will be an answer to a prayer, a confirmation of a prayer, like, because I've been asking a lot of confirming prayers. I'm like, God, can you please confirm this to me? Like, is this you? Y'all, the number will be I confirm, or confirmation, or deposit, or reassurance, or guarantee. Literally the number. Like, it is wild. I prayed one night, like, is this person manipulative? Like, this feels like manipulation. I woke up, the number was the number of Jezebel. Literally. And the other number, because I do the before number, the after number, the number before was retain, to hinder, to cut off. And the next number meant Jezebel. I'm like, oh, okay. Got it. Like, I'm telling y'all, it has been like, so literally, if I wake up at 2:34, I do 2:34, biblical number, Google it. Biblical number. I don't do angel numbers. 2:34 biblical number. It'll look up a number from Strong's Concordance. Strong's Concordance will give you up the Greek and the Hebrew translation of the Bible. And so if you see numbers frequently, and this is not for everybody, this is just for me. This is what has been working for me. You don't have to do this. But when I saw that, every night, and so my dreams have gotten more vivid. There's ways that God is talking to me more, through people, I'll ask God, like, one day, y'all, I was, what was I doing? I was asking God, I was like, God, please, if I'm on the right path, please let me know I'm on the right path. Like, just tell me I'm on the right path. So that day, I had 3 people tell me that I was on the right path. Like, and it was random. It was like, Sam, I just want to let you know you're on the right path. Like, don't stop. Like, I know it hurts. I know it's going whatever, but you're on the right path. That first one, I cried. Second time, I'm like, okay. Third one, I'm like, all right, God, I got it. There's been times I'm like, God, if you want me to do this, have this person or this person call me and tell me. One of those people I literally wrote it down. I probably have so much in my phone right now. It's actually crazy. But I'm telling you guys, the journey is so fulfilling because it's understanding that this is so much bigger than us. Like this world is so much bigger than us. And we're choosing over God. There's a real God you're choosing over. When we sometimes don't think of God as like being real. But when we are disobedient, we're literally, it's almost, I don't know how to describe it any other way but this. It's like saying, I want to lose weight, but I'm not getting on a diet. So you just gonna stay the same. You're not going anywhere closer to where you want to be because you're refusing to do the things that you need to do to get there. We can't be mad, oh, God isn't answering my prayers, oh, God isn't doing this. And we want him to move mountains on our behalf, but we're not willing to be obedient in the areas that he's calling us to be obedient in. What kind of trust is that? How can you say you have faith in a God and you're not willing to make the sacrifices he's calling you to make? How do you expect him to move on any part of your behalf? And the thing is, God is gracious, so he will move. But how much more would he move? Or how much quicker would he move if you would just be obedient? And my opinion, honestly, y'all, I've just gotten to a place, if I'm just being honest with you, is that my life has way more meaning. My life has way more meaning. That's just period. My life has more meaning. So even if, I told him the other day, I'm like, listen, if this road doesn't lead down if the promised land is not what the promised land I envision, if it's not what, as a flawed human, I believe what you're telling me, you've confirmed it. So I believe it. And I'm not going to allow the enemy to cause doubt within me. I believe it. I believe you. And I'm not going to doubt. But I'm saying this with an open hand posture. If you want my Isaac, you can have it. Like if you want it, you can have it. Because at this point, I have you. I want you. And if I have you, I have everything. So back to my point. So we have the soul wounds, okay? Everybody has a soul wound. Soul wounds are, and somebody asked me about Isaac. Sorry. So before I move forward with Isaac. Isaac is in the Bible. Abraham was promised a son. He ends up getting ahead of God and creating a child with his maidservant. That maidservant's son is Ishmael. He later on, he ends up getting his actual wife, who was the promised child, Isaac. What happens when you create Ishmael, when you were supposed to wait on Isaac, is that Ishmael and Isaac are at odds for the rest of their life. Ishmael trying to take Isaac out, Isaac trying to take Ishmael out. Those two nations are still warring to this day. So you can create a nation that literally is trying to fight your legacy. Both sides. But that's besides the point. You don't want to create an Ishmael because a lot of us settle and create Ishmaels when we should have been waiting for an Isaac. We're like, oh, God, you're taking too long. Let me go ahead and, settle here in the wilderness and make a home with Ishmael. When God said, I promised you Isaac. But anyway, so moving forward. So now, in this sermon, when it's talking about the wilderness, one of the biggest reasons why God allows us to be in the wilderness is to heal us, is to prepare us, right? And a lot of us, because we become impatient, we lack faith. We wanted what we wanted. And so as soon as it looked like it was taking too long, it looked like it wasn't happening, it looked like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm fasting, I'm praying, I'm trying to get close to you, and what I wanted didn't happen, forget all this stuff. Forget the regimen, forget the Bible, forget going to church, forget me making sacrifices on a daily basis, because it's not about just church on Sunday, y'all. It's not about church on Sunday. It's about a relationship with God every day. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, I go to church every Sunday. That don't mean nothing to me. What's your relationship like with God? You know, because that's a real thing. You can go to, I would rather you spend time with God every day on your own than to go to church on Sunday. What is the intentional time that you're taking with God? That's not real. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about relationship. Okay. So, in this wilderness season is about preparation and it's about healing. Preparation and healing. Preparation and healing. Healing and preparation. Right? And so when we're waiting, like I said, a lot of us can settle in a wilderness because we're impatient on the promised land. We're like, it doesn't take too long. I don't like this. I'm uncomfortable. Ooh, I don't like it. A lot of times, y'all, those feelings that come up while you're waiting are what God wants you to be confronted with. Are you impatient? Do you really trust him? Was this about you getting what you want from me, or is this a real relationship? Now, if the shoe was on the other foot and somebody was just with you to get things from you, because we've talked about this, I've talked about this type of topic for years. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what this person wants from me. Well, how is your relationship with God? Do you just go to him and it's about a mission? It's about a prayer request. It's about, oh, I want this job. Oh, I want you to move on my behalf for this. Oh, I want you to do this for me. Is that how it is? Is it a manipulation type of relationship? Because if you look at it, a lot of us don't want that to be done to us, but that's what we're doing to God. We really be seeking him when we need him. When we're trying to get the get out of jail free card, we really be on our knees trying to figure out what to do. We be turning to Jesus then. But then when we're out or when we're free or when it didn't happen as fast as we wanted it to happen, we give up. We lose hope. We're like, forget it. I don't want this. This is too hard. I don't want this. So how do you feel? There's so many levels to this, family. There's so many levels to this. But the main thing I really want you guys to know is that when we're in a wilderness, it's not for us to rush out of the wilderness. And I'm saying this to myself because it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard. But I've learned so much about myself that I understand why it's necessary. Because when I go into my next promotion, when I go into my next season, I want to be prepared. I want to be ready. I don't want to go into it and I'm not where I need to be. I want to steward it well. I don't want to make the same mistakes I've made in the past. I want to be the woman God has called me to be. I wasn't her before. You know? So anyway, the wilderness is about preparation, and the wilderness is about healing, right? And so when being in this wilderness, there's things that God has called me to do, like in obedience, and those things have revealed certain aspects of my character, that some things that I'm not happy about, things that I really want to change about myself. And the beautiful part about that is where you can just say to God, like, I acknowledge my lack of patience. I thought I was a super patient person. I'm not. I'm not. You know, or God, I thought, you know, I thought I was so courageous, but I'm not courageous at all. Like I'm taking calculated risks, or risks that you've empowered me to do, but I'm not. And so the other part of that is these core wounds, right? And before I even saw like the day before I went in the sermon, God had started talking to me about walking outside. Like, just going on walks outside, you know? And so on Saturday, y'all, I went on a 8.5 mile walk. And that wasn't on purpose. That wasn't on purpose. I went an 8.5 mile walk because I got lost in the park. Doesn't matter. I went on the walk. But when I came back from the walk, I felt so at peace. So, okay, and then transition on to Sunday, right? So I go to church. He talks about the covenant manipulation, and he says core wounds, that the wilderness is about healing certain wounds that you can't take into the next level, right? So, for example, with Joseph was in the wilderness, and that was when he went to serve I think it was like a chief. I forgot what the guy did, but he was below Pharaoh, but he had a security position. I can't remember what he did, but when he worked as a slave for him, he was developing character, right? He was super obedient. He continued to walk in integrity. And when his wife was trying to push up on Joseph, Joseph ran. Joseph went as far as he possibly could, right? Joseph maintained his integrity even when temptation was facing him. So in the wilderness, he developed a character that even though he didn't know when God was going to promote him, he still walked in integrity. He still did what God called him to do. Then he got into a situation where he was accused of this thing with this woman. He goes to the prison. He didn't do it. He interprets dreams. He interprets his dreams correctly. Those dreams come to pass. He stays in prison for another year. And then one night, all of a sudden, Pharaoh has a dream. He's looking for an interpreter, and the baker remembers him. And from that night, one night, he's promoted from the prison to the palace. And he's second in command. His dream doesn't manifest for another 7 years, right? So again, there was a lot of process, but he had to just stay faithful in the process, because if you were second in power in Egypt, you were a second in power to the most powerful country in the world at that time. That was a lot of power. God had a huge position for Joseph. He had to make sure that he had the character to withstand that position. A lot of y'all have promises that God has on your life. There's a lot that God is talking to you about. You won't step into those positions of power until God knows that you're able to handle it. So yes, you might be saying this is uncomfortable, and you might be saying you don't want to go into a wilderness season. You don't want to be uncomfortable. You don't want to give those things up. But you also have to know that you are also saying in the same breath that the type of power and position and authority that God wants you to have, not only in the physical and the spiritual, you're saying, nah, I'll pass on that because I'd rather be comfortable. No, I'll pass on my dream because I'd rather be comfortable. No, I'll pass on this because I'd rather do what I want to do. No, I'll pass on that. I'd rather not make those kind of sacrifices temporarily because I'd rather just do whatever I want to do. And y'all, you can look back like I did 2 years later and say, that was a waste. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I chose that. There are people that have lived their life and have passed away, not realizing their full potential because they were not willing to take risks and get uncomfortable. Do not be one of those people that make those types of decisions. There was a quote that I listened to before. I think it was Dr. Miles Monroe, but he says the place with the most dreams, the richest place on the planet, is a cemetery where all the dreams, the inventions, the things that did not come to pass were not realized because people did not move. People did not act on those things. There's always process to promise, and that's for our benefit. That is for our benefit. But because we don't like being uncomfortable, I don't want to be alone. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of the unknown. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. I don't like it. I don't want to be by myself. Okay. God's like, there's only to a certain level I'm going to take you then. You don't trust me like that? You don't have faith in me like that? That means that the level of faith you have is as far as you'll go. If you only have faith to see that chair in front of you, that's as far as you go. If you only have as much faith as to see my clock on that wall, that's as far as you go. If you see me, you have a mile long faith, 2 miles long faith, that's as far as you go. You make the decision about where you want to go in life. Your behavior will dictate how much faith you have in the God that you say that you believe. Our currency in the kingdom is not money. It's faith. But the problem is people believe more in manifesting and all this other stuff where you speak things into existence. Oh, it just comes back around. And I'm not saying that you don't speak things into existence, because that's definitely, you do speak things into existence. However, why is that easier to believe than a God that can do it? I still don't understand that. It's still an unseen force bringing things into your life. But it's just the enemy trying to take God out of the picture. And then I saw this girl who was like a manifestation coach. She turns and she's done faith-based content. And she's like, once I started manifesting everything I wanted, I didn't have the character to maintain it. That I would get it and I would lose it and I wasn't happy. And I found myself on this wheel that I couldn't maintain because I was depending on me to do it. So she realized in that time frame, she found God and she found purpose. And so therefore, all the things that she was bringing into her life, because she got the faith thing down, because that's what manifestation is. It's a faith thing. You're believing things that you do not see. Once she put that in line with her belief, she became unstoppable. You can look her up online. I don't know her name. But the level of faith that we have is how far we'll go in the kingdom. When I started dreaming again, that's when I started really seeing things happen in my life. I started seeing how God, oh, you're dreaming again? Oh, I can do something with that. When you start dreaming, you start hoping, and you start that's where God can really move. He's like, oh, you got a dream you can't do? I can. Okay, cool. Because all you've been doing is depending on you all this time. You've been depending on how far you can take you. You've been depending on things in your own strength. Now that you've got a dream that only I can bring to pass, we are now in business. Amazing. But you have to understand that it comes with process. So y'all, I know I'm at this length of time. I'm going to quickly go over core wounds. I'll more in depth go over that on Wednesday. I'm going to briefly introduce the topic because I did not anticipate going on this long about wilderness. That was just a God thing. Somebody needed to hear that because that's not why I came on here today. So getting into the story, when I went to church and they started talking about wilderness, core wounds, as I stated before, I immediately went home. I went on my knees. I started praying. And I just asked God for forgiveness because I realized that I'm being manipulative. I'm trying to get an end goal and I'm doing all these things. And that's why I'm trying to control it so much. But God said to me, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. And I said, okay. And so I was prompted to look up these core wounds. I was prompted to figure it out. So there's 5 main core wounds that you can find online. And everybody has at least one core wound. And so I'm going to just briefly go over those things today. We'll go more in depth on Wednesday. Wednesday's not going to be a typical time because I'm going out of town. But I will still be going live. I just won't be doing it the way I normally do it. So just prepare your spirit. but these are the 5 soul core wounds. Why is this important? The important part of why we should be aware of our core wounds is that they typically run in the background of our subconscious. These help form our beliefs and they help form our fears in an attempt to protect us from experiencing the wound again. Unfortunately, these wounds often bring you to a place of self-sabotage. They end up keeping you captive to protect you. And so you might sabotage relationships, sabotage opportunities, sabotage different areas. If you can think of the weakest area in your life, you sabotage, and a lot of that goes back down to a core wound. So in this process, God has shown me surface wounds. And then now, Samantha is full of wisdom, so I call her Miss Wisdom. Can you please pray for me to receive favor and wisdom from God? In Jesus' name, amen. Now, Sam, I'm going to be praying for your wisdom first. Because remember, Solomon prayed for wisdom. And Solomon got all he wanted. So let's pray for wisdom to be able to steward the favor and the blessings well. Because a lot of us want the favor and the blessings, but we don't steward them well. So pray for that. Pray for that favor. Okay? I mean, pray for that wisdom. So anyway, back to what I was saying. And you know, Sam, your name Sam means God heard, or God has heard her, or God has, well, because I'm Samantha, but God has heard her, God hears. So God hears you too. You don't have to go through somebody else. God can hear you. So anyway, 5 wounds. Rejection. So this is a core wound. Everyone, y'all, please don't be on here acting like y'all ain't got no core wounds, because everybody got at least one. And there's strength. There is strength in admitting it. Why is this important? This is important because, y'all, these are things that are sabotaging. I don't care what you have. I don't care. I don't know who watches me. I don't know everybody that watches my stuff. Everybody has a core wound. And that core wound speaks. And until you address the core wound, that's going to be an area of your life you are not going to you're not going to reach your fullest potential. You're just not. Oh, well, at least I'll be protected then. You won't be fulfilled. That's the point. Anything that's keeping you from purpose is keeping you from fulfillment. I know we like to be safe and cozy and not have to feel anything and this, that, and the third, but that's not really living. It's not really living. So anyway, no big bad wolf talk. Let's be real here. You ain't got to write it down. I just want you guys to pay attention. There are 5 main core wounds, and these are very important, okay? Because understanding which one is you will help you fix that problem. All right? All right. Number 1, first core wound is rejection. The mask that people that struggle with rejection tend to wear is a withdrawer. That's somebody that tends to withdraw. They tend to create their own reality. They speak very little. They tend to withdraw. Okay. Their fear is their panic of being rejected. They often withdraw to avoid further rejection. They're perfectionists. They have a tendency to escape reality. They're attracted to the intellectual and spiritual world. They're indifferent to material things. Okay? So that is somebody that struggles with rejection, right? And there's way more to it. But if that resonates with you, that rejection, the mask, if you're a withdrawer, you tend to withdraw from situations, withdraw from relationships, this might very well be you. Okay? Look into it. All right. Number 2, abandonment. Abandonment, or the core wound of abandonment, is the mask that person wears is being codependent or dependent, right? Their fear is loneliness. Someone with an abandonment wound struggles with deep sadness, a need for attention, and difficulty in functioning independently. They seek constant reassurance. They merge into others' emotions. They fear loneliness, and they may create drama or overextend themselves to feel valued and supported. That's somebody who struggles with abandonment. Number 3, humiliation. The mask that person wears is a martyr or a self-punisher. They fear freedom. A person with a humiliation wound keeps themselves busy or constantly busy, helping others to reduce guilt and avoid personal freedom, which they fear due to a lack of limits. Beneath their humble exterior lies a hidden pride, a fear of sensuality, and a deep need to sacrifice themselves to feel worthy and avoid judgment. Number 4, betrayal. The mask that somebody who has been betrayed or struggles with a betrayal wound is somebody who's controlling or the controller. The fear is separation and denial. A person with a betrayal wound struggles with trust, control, and the fear of being let down, often believing they must take charge in order to ensure success. They seek importance, they impose their views, and they can be impatient and manipulative, all while unknowingly deepening their fear of abandonment and betrayal. That is the wound of betrayal. All right? The wound, last wound, and y'all, this is the wound that God is dealing with me about. So this let me drink my little Perrier, y'all. The wound of injustice. The mask. You will know a lot about which one you are based upon what mask you wear. Okay, so if you heard a mask that resonates with you, look into that core wound. The mask you wear, or mask people that struggle with injustice wear, is strict and rigid. Then strict, rigid, inflexible. The fear is coldness. All right? A person with the wound of injustice strives for perfection. They're suppressing their true emotions and always appearing to be positive and in control. They reject vulnerability, overwork themselves to prove their worth, and struggle with intimacy due to their rigid need for fairness and self-sufficiency. All right? The mask, again, so you guys know the person that struggles with rejection, the mask that they wear is somebody who withdraws or a withdrawer. They tend to withdraw. That's somebody who has their core wound, whether they realize it or not, is rejection. Number 2, if you struggle with abandonment, if your core wound is abandonment, the mask that you wear is codependent or dependency, right? You tend to overextend yourself to feel valued and supported. You struggle with a deep sadness, a need for attention, and difficulty functioning independently. Number 3 is humiliation. The mask that person wears is a self-punisher, a martyr. Their fear is freedom, okay? And they tend to keep themselves constantly busy helping others to reduce guilt and avoid personal freedom. Beneath their humble exterior is a hidden pride, a fear of sensuality, and a deep need to sacrifice themselves to feel worthy and avoid judgment. Number 4 is betrayal. The mask that person wears is a controller. Their fear is separation and denial. And number 5 is injustice, the core wound of injustice. The mask that person wears is strict, rigid, inflexible. Their fear is coldness. No, that resonates with me. All right, so we are going to talk more about these wounds on Wednesday. There's a little bit of an introduction for those who were like, oh, I have multiple that, like I said, most people have at least one. There's two on here that resonate with me. So that you have at least one. But when we're talking about core wounds, we're not talking about, oh, I'm impatient or, oh, I get angry, or this is what the real issue is. This is where all of it starts. Your core is where it all comes from. You identify this, you fix the problem. Like I could be taking, Tylenol for a flu, but until I take the medication for a flu, I'm not going to get well. That's the same thing. This is core wounds. And this is not just like, oh, ain't nobody reject me since I was, once I became a whippersnapper, your boy getting all of them. Okay. But there might have been a time where you were dealing with rejection. There might have been a time in your childhood where you felt rejected. There's a lot of different things that can happen over time that can make you sensitive to certain things. We're not here to do big bad wolf talk. We're not here saying, boy, I want. No, be real about it. Why? Because this right here, you get this right, you start getting a lot of other things right. You let God have this core wound in this wilderness, watch what he does with your life. Because a lot of the reason why I was so rigid and I was so fixated on a place to go, like when God gives me a promise, I'm like, okay, so when do we get there? How do we get there? What are we going to, like, I'm trying to figure out how to get there because I'm rigid. I need to see the course. It was hard for me to have faith because I am very like this. So my core wound was getting in my way of being able to really have faith because I struggle with believing in things I can't see. I need to see it. Right? So me struggling with that particular thing was actually getting in the way of my relationship with God. Because I would default to what I see. I understood that. People that are rigid we're very like this, like, I don't care what's going on with me. Every day at a certain time, you're going to find me in that gym. I don't care what's going on with me. Every time at 8 p.m. on Monday or Wednesday night, you're going to see me on this daggone live. So it works for me in certain areas because I'm going to show up. You can depend on me, right? You can rely upon me. But in other instances, that core wound, especially relationally, is a problem. It's a real problem. And God was like, listen, in our relationship, this is the problem. You're so rigid, you don't let me do me. So like when you surrender a process to God, you can't tell God how to do your process. I can't say, God, I want this, but I want to take that. I want to take the road through Cabo to Bali. Let's stop at Thailand. Oh, and then go to Australia. And then maybe do a little beach in Capri or whatever. And then I'll get there. No, like that's not, you don't tell God how to do what he do. You know what I mean? God's going, like, so for someone like me being rigid, I want to control the process. He's like, okay, I'm not going to be in control and you being in control. One of us got to be the adult. One of us got to be the child. Who's going to do it? Because I'm not going to be the child, but I'm just going to exit stage left. I'm going to let you, if you feel like you got it, I'm going to let you have it. Have you had it this whole time? You haven't, because you've been here. You still praying to me. So clearly you ain't got it. Why don't you let me do it the way I do it? Because my process not only prepares you for the promise, it heals you so that when you get whatever you're praying for, you can steward that well. Sometimes we go into things and we're not actually ready for them. And God understands and values the process. That is why you're going through a process. And if you give up like I did a couple years ago, I gave up on the process. I was more committed to the outcome I wanted in the time frame I wanted it than the actual process. And now God has me starting back. We back at square one. Well, I might not be at square one right now, but I got further than the last time. I'm gonna make it through this thing, okay? Me and God locked in. We ain't going nowhere. We together, okay? We locked in, But at this point, I understand that this process is revealing things in me, and I'm gonna honor the process. It's funny because one thing that God had, like I said, God had me walking outside, and an interesting thing is that there's research that shows to heal core wounds. Y'all get this. God prompted me on Saturday to go. I could prove this. God prompted me on Saturday to go out for a walk. I don't normally go out for walks. I go on treadmills. I don't do walks. So I was like, okay, God, I'll go out on a walk. And I did. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I love nature. I actually, when I'm around trees, I recharge. I feel great. Come back now. I didn't anticipate to take 2 hours, but that's neither here nor there. I come back. I cook myself some good dinner. I eat well. It was all amazing, right? Then God asked me to do something, and that made me feel a little uncomfortable. I did it anyway. And I kind of spun in that. The enemy kind of brought up all my stuff. I found out on Sunday that about this core wound that I was struggling with. I knew I had it, but I didn't really know what it was. And I looked up, how do you heal it? How do you heal core wounds? What do you do about that? Y'all want to know what it said? That's how you know God is involved, y'all. Because I'm telling y'all, it blew my mind. Do you know how to heal core wounds? Do you know how you heal them? Y'all, it got me. When I found out, it got me. I'm like, okay. Okay. Y'all ready? Here's the two things that you do. 2 things that you do to heal a core wound. Number 1, experiential. It's called experience. Some people call it exposure therapy, experiential therapy. Usually it's experiences that they call it masochistic. I can't ever say that word, masochist or masochist. I don't know how to say that word, but masochist. But basically, finding pleasure in pain. So exposing yourself to the very things that cause you that anxiety and recognizing it in the moment. That is what heals it. Is being aware of your core wound, and then as you're being aware of it, putting yourselves in situations that challenge your core wound, which is exactly why we go through a wilderness. I'm going through this whole process that's triggering me. Y'all, I told y'all I'm out here crying every day. I'm like, God, what is going on with me? Why am I dealing with all this? I don't understand this. What's the point of this? I come to find out the very way to heal me. Come on, y'all don't know. Y'all not listening to me. The very way to heal me is the very thing God has been doing. So I'm over here like, God, like I'm crying. I'm going through all. The only way to develop the muscle for the core wound is to go through experience where you have to work the muscle for the core wound. If you decide to isolate yourself and not expose the core wound, you don't work the muscle. you don't get better in that area. Here's the second one, y'all. Here's the second thing, and I've already given you a tip of what that was. One is exposure therapy, putting yourselves in positions where you have to experience the wound. That's the way to heal the wound. Second one was nature. So you had me on this 8.5-mile walk, probably not intentionally because I got lost. My sense of direction is not there. I use directions every day. I use Waze every day. Okay, so that's not my strong suit. That was not God, that was me. However, he did tell me to go out in a walk, and I did. And I came back, I didn't feel better. I did not realize that the very way to heal this, if I wasn't listening to the promptings of my spirit, I wouldn't understand that he had been having me walk outside, in my area for a while. Well, not for a while, but for a week. He was like, go outside. And I'm like, why am I going outside? Like, it started the week before, really. Actually, it started the week before. I said it was Saturday. Saturday is when I went on a official walk. Like, I went to a park to walk. But he had me start going outside the Sunday before. I didn't even realize that he was starting the process of healing me. And if I had given up in this process, if I had given up in the wilderness, I would not even realize that the very things he's challenging me in is the very way to heal me. That if I gave up in the process because it was hard and I didn't follow the promptings that I had in my spirit, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, telling you how to heal it. That if I didn't challenge myself, he challenged me, and I ended up doing it on Saturday, I wouldn't have gone to church looking for an answer that ended up letting me know what I was actually dealing with. That the very process that I was running from was the very process that would have healed me. Not just from what I was experiencing in that moment, but what I've been struggling with my whole life. The two things he's been doing were the two things that were healing me. And that was me looking up how do I fix this? Expose you to painful circumstances that challenge your core wound and nature. Two things that he was doing. And I didn't even realize. I didn't even know. And I'm over here fighting a process, being upset that I don't know when and I don't know how and I don't know what. Because really being rigid, the way to get out of being rigid is to constantly be in circumstances where you have to be flexible. That's the only way to break yourself out of it. And so he had situations that I had to learn how to be. I could not be fixated on my perspective. I had to be flexible. Whew. Y'all, I'll tell you what. Y'all can't tell me there ain't no God. I'm telling you. You cannot tell me there is not a God. At the two things, I'm sorry, I'm still on that. I'm still on that. I'm still on the fact that I'm over here and y'all literally fighting this process. And the very things that I'm running from that are making me uncomfortable are what healing me. I didn't know that back then. I didn't know that 2 years ago. I thought if I was uncomfortable, that means I had to run from it. I had to go back to what I know. I had to go back to who I know, what I know. When what I know and who I know is what's kept me where I've been. Right? Like, this ain't helping me grow forward. This ain't helping me propel into purpose. There's things that God is calling me to do. And here I am playing with y'all, staying in the same situation. I ain't got no further to what I believe God has put in my spirit. There are things that God has put on your spirit, dreams that have not been realized. And a lot of us are just giving up because it's hard. And God's like, no, you still haven't, until you abide by my process, you're going to stay right where you at. So until you want God results, you got to do it my way. If you want your results, you got to do it your way. You want to keep trying to do it your way, do it. You know how, you know where you take you. Go take you there. Go. When you're ready to really dream with me, do it my way, you're going to see it's not going to be as fast as you want it to be. And there's a reason for it. There's a process in it. There's things we learn from it. It's not going to be as quick as we want. It's not going to look the way we want. But you're going to go further than you ever thought you could go. That, my friends, is the beauty of this process. Is that your dreams are limited. What you think about is within your concept of self. God has a dream for you that's bigger than any dream you could ever have had for yourself. That's why your process has to be so hard. Because he's got something so insane for you that you haven't even thought of yet. You haven't even thought of what God has. He does exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ever ask, think, or imagine. And we're so committed to what we want. We're like, I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. I'm just gonna give up. I'm just gonna do it my way. And it's like, no. If you were just obedient, like I was if I would have just been obedient 2 years ago, I probably would have gotten further faster. But my story is my story. It is what it is. At least now I can tell you that although people say the promise is the promise, and no matter what you do, you get the promise. No matter what happens, you're going to get the same result because God is a good God. No, you can opt in and out of the promises God has for you by your behavior. You can get in your own way. You absolutely can. There are certain things that are going to happen regardless because God is gracious, God is merciful, and he gives good gifts to his children. However, there are certain things that your behavior unlocks certain things. I'll say it with my own child. Soraya, there are certain things Soraya gonna get. I'm gonna make sure Soraya has everything she needs. I'm gonna make sure Soraya eats. I'm gonna make sure that she has clothes on her back and everything that she needs in order to do well. She don't have to do those things for me to do that for her because I love her. But the extra stuff, like the extra, the additional things, those are things that I have to see certain behaviors for. There are certain things that certain behaviors unlock that in me. Like, you did good in school. Okay, well, you said you want to go to the circus. Let's go to the circus. You're not going to be failing, acting up in school, and I'm going to be out here taking you to everything I could think of. You want to go on this thing, or you want to go on this vacation, you want to do this thing. It's like, no. No. There are certain things that God wants to do in your life that obedience unlocks. Full obedience unlocks. That doesn't mean you're perfect. That does not mean that. It means you're faithful. David, y'all know how I feel about David, because David was a fighter. I like me a little fighter now. I ain't gonna lie. David was a fighter. David was a lover. He had a big heart. And David was brave. He was courageous. He wasn't afraid of nothing. David was a man of valor. David, he was also a musician. He was into music. He created music. David was also handsome. Now we got to talk all about David. David had it all, okay? David has some shortcomings. We're gonna talk about it later. We're not gonna talk about that right now. But David was not perfect. David was not perfect. David had flaws. David had flaws. Let's just call it a butt. King David has some issues. David was not the most perfect moral king, but God could trust his heart. And some of you guys have to understand that, no, you're not perfect. God knew that when he chose you. God knew that when he chose me. You are exactly who God created you to be. And there's a reason why you are the way you are. Then maybe you're not the most perfect person. Maybe you're not the most moral person. God didn't create you to do that. But in this season, he's calling you to be obedient. In this season, he's calling you to lock in, focus. Let's get through this. Let's get through this wilderness, because there's something, you're wasting time. Time is of the essence. Let's get to where you're supposed to go. You're wasting time. You're sitting here wallowing over the past. I need you to get up. It's time to go. Come on. How long are you going to mourn what I've rejected? It's time to get up, family. It's not time to stay in woe is me and I was hurt and this hurt. No, it's not time for that no more. It's time for us to get up. It's time for us to start really giving God the sacrifices. We keep praying to him about the same things. Let's start getting through the process. You want him to move a mountain. Why don't you climb over a puddle? We keep asking God to do all these miraculous. I want the house. I want the car. I want the job. I want this. I want that. I want $1 billion. I want this. I want that. I want to be a business there. I want to do. Okay, you want those things, but are you willing to surrender to process? Are you willing to surrender to the process? If you're not, stay where you are. But I can't trust you with more if I have not prepared you for more. Because the same brokenness that has you where you are now is going to show up later. And I can't give you that and trust you with more if I can't see that the character has been built to give you more. We talked about this last week, y'all. We talked about this last week. We see people that get millions of dollars overnight through the lottery. And I think it's over 90% go bankrupt in 3 years. They had no process. They just got $1 million or a couple $100 million. Bankrupt in a couple years? How? No process. We see it all the time, how people have no process to fame, have no process. Only the enemy elevates us like that. The enemy does it because he knows you can't steward it. He knows you gonna fail. He knows that whatever you got going on, he knows. When there's no process to any relationship, oh, it should be easy. The relationship should be. No, I don't think a relationship should be toxic. Do not get me wrong there. I don't think a relationship should be toxic. But easy? No. Easy to me is a red flag. Ain't no relationship easy. Problem with our relationships today is that we expect them to be too easy. Relationships are not easy. It's two people coming together. And yes, your life gets better because of that. There is a benefit to it. We were created for each other. We are perfect complements to each other. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. There is a beauty to connection with with your person. It just is. Whole point of this is to say this, and I know I'm going off on tangents and I don't want to say this. There's always a process of things worth having, always. We can't, I know our world wants to say, oh, I don't want to work, I don't want to do this. We've gotten very instant gratification driven. God is calling you to process. There are things that God is dealing with you about that he wants to do. He's been pressing on your heart. Answer the door. Answer the call. Answer it. Answer it. What are you waiting for? Your flesh is going to fight. Your flesh is going to fight what's good for you all the time. I told you this. I told you a story before, but I'm going to use a different example. Watch 600 Pound Life. If you've ever watched it, they need to lose weight, not just because they, whatever, but their body is shutting down at that size. Whenever you watch them in the doctor's office, what are they talking about? They're saying to them, your body is going to fight you to stay the same. Our body doesn't like change. Our body fights to stay the same. So even if you need to lose weight, even in 600-pound situations, they're fighting their flesh to lose weight. That's why it's so hard for them. That's why they created a show about it. Our flesh does not want to do what is good for us, ever. So you can't expect, oh, when I feel like it. No. Feeling like it, it's probably not going to happen. Because your spirit may give you an anointing. There's been anointings I've had to do certain things in my life. Have I felt like it? No. Stop waiting. Stop waiting. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for a moment. Stop waiting. God is calling you right now to a process. Are you going to answer it? Or are you not? It's time. It's time. You now know what the world is like. You know what it offers. It's not really missing out. You're not missing out on much. You done swam the seas. You done seen all the fish. All the fish, they might be pretty fish. Where does that take us? It's time for us to surrender to process. What a perfect time when we're in Lent. It's not too late. Lent started last Wednesday, but it's not too late. Finish it out. Finish strong. Give up something that you need to give up. Just whatever God calls you to do. Holy Spirit, what should I give up? What should I give up? Do I need to give up social media? Am I going to stop eating breakfast? Stop eating lunch? Stop eating dinner? Stop eating chips? Stop eating desserts? What are you going to give up? What are you going to do? What sacrifice are you going to make? You asking God out here to move mountains. What you going to give up for him? What about your life is so comfortable that you're like, yeah, I know I've been praying about that, but I'm just this and I'm just that. I don't. You can use those excuses if you want to. We're talking about a relationship with your Creator. It's Lent. All right? So, anyway, family, I'm done for tonight. I have overtalked. I apologize. This was not going to be long. I did not want this to be long, but I had to go long. So we're going to be cutting this up into definitely a few, this might even be the episode for on Wednesday, but I'm going to go live again on Wednesday. I plan to, and we'll talk a little bit more about core wounds. So I thank you guys for joining me tonight. Thank you guys for the likes. I thank you guys for those who donated to the channel. Like I said, we're doing more and more things for the channel. And so it is very, very helpful for you guys when you give. You have no idea. So please, thank you guys for Please like, subscribe if you have not yet already. We put out content almost daily. We don't want you to miss a thing. And yeah, I'll be back at some point on Wednesday, and we'll do another, it'll probably be a quick live because I gave y'all a lot tonight. But we'll talk a little bit more later, okay? I love y'all. Thank you, James. Thank you, Serving My Redeemer. Thank you so much, y'all. Tony, thank you. Jesus Christ is my Lord. Thank you. Thank you for that. Tyrone, Lorenzo, Tylas, thank you guys so much. Look into those core wounds, family. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on Wednesday, okay? I love y'all. Have a great night. Bye-bye.